Okay, we're about to dive into one of the most famous, most quoted passages in the entire Bible, the Sermon on the Mount. But what if I told you there's a puzzle hiding in plain sight, right there in Matthew chapter 6? A puzzle that, according to our source for this explainer, could change how we understand some of Jesus' most direct commands.
And this is the heart of it, the big question. How is it that we can have two instructions from Jesus, structured in almost the exact same way, but we've ended up with totally opposite rules for how to follow them? It just doesn't quite add up, and that's the mystery we're going to unpack today.
So to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to look at what seems like a major contradiction in the sermon. It's really a tale of two very specific verses.
All right, so just look at the structure here. On the left, when it comes to giving to the poor, Jesus says, don't do it as the hypocrites do. Simple enough. Then on the right, for prayer, he says, don't do it as the heathen do. I mean, the phrasing is almost identical, right? But the way we've traditionally interpreted them is completely different. The rule for giving is all about your inner motive. Don't be a hypocrite in your heart. But the rule for prayer is about the outward action. Don't actually say a bunch of repetitive words. So why the inconsistency?
And listen, this isn't just some small, nitpicky detail for scholars to argue about. This is a really big deal. It raises a huge question about whether we're reading these foundational teachings consistently. It kind of seems like we might have a serious contradiction on our hands.
So let's dig into that traditional view for a minute. For, centuries, the general agreement has been that this is all about the problem of hypocrisy.
You've got these theological heavy hitters, guys like Augustine and Calvin, and they basically argued that, look, the sin isn't giving charity where people can see you. The real sin is your motive for doing it, that desire to get a round of applause from everyone. So, according to this logic, if you can just purify your heart, get rid of that need for praise, then giving publicly is totally fine. It's all about what's going on inside.
Okay, but here's where that logic starts to get a little shaky. If the number one rule is that it's all about your internal motive, what happens when we apply that exact same rule to the command about prayer?
Well, if we're being consistent, the sin in prayer wouldn't be the repetitive words themselves, right? It would be the false heathen belief that saying more words somehow makes God listen better. So if you just ditch that bad belief, then logically, repetitive prayer should be perfectly okay. And right there, you can see the problem this creates.
We're left with this glaring inconsistency. The traditional interpretation says public charity is fine if your heart is pure, but it still says repetitive prayer is wrong, even though the very same logic should make both of them permissible. This whole confusion just screams out for a fresh perspective.
And this is where our source material introduces a really fascinating idea. It suggests there's one single unifying principle that makes this whole puzzle just click into place. And it's called the secrecy factor.
So what is the secrecy factor? Well, it's the idea that Jesus' command isn't mainly about our inner thoughts, it's about our outward actions. It argues that all three of these acts of worship, giving, praying, and fasting, are actually commanded to be done in physical secrecy, literally hidden from other people.
And wow, when you see it laid out like this, the difference is just crystal clear. Look at that column on the right. Under the secrecy factor, there's one simple, consistent rule for everything. Giving has to be secret. Prayer with many words, that's forbidden because it's a public performance. Fasting, you have to be totally inconspicuous. It's one clear, action-based command that applies across the board. No contradictions.
And here's the real kicker. If Jesus only cared about our motives, he would have said something like what's on the left. Hey, when you give, just guard your heart. But he didn't say that. He gave this incredibly specific, physical command. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. He demands a level of secrecy that's so extreme it's almost a metaphor. The entire focus is on the act of hiding it.
So, why? Why this intense, almost obsessive focus on secrecy? Well, it's not just some random rule. It actually points to something incredibly profound about the very nature of God.
The whole point of worshiping in secret is to mirror God's own nature. The idea is that God himself dwells and operates from a secret place. He sees in secret. He rewards in secret. So to really truly connect with God, our worship has to enter that exact same private hidden space. We're aligning our actions with his very being.
So where does that leave hypocrisy? Well, in this view, hypocrisy isn't actually the main sin that Jesus is trying to stop. Instead, hypocrisy, that deep-seated craving for human praise, is the temptation that causes us to disobey the real command, which is the command for secrecy. It's spiritually deadly because it literally pulls you away from the hidden path to God.
So it all boils down to this incredibly powerful distinction. All the miracles and teachings in Matthew chapter 5, that's all about public witness. But these personal acts of devotion in chapter 6, the giving, the praying, the fasting, that's about private communion. They're not meant to be a show for others. They are for an audience of one.
And that leaves us with a really challenging final thought to chew on. We spend so much time focusing on the why, our internal motives, having the right heart for worship, but what if this whole analysis is right? What if the how of worship, the simple physical act of secrecy, is just as crucial as the why we've always been told is the only thing that matters?